Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at a moment that sent shockwaves across the world and reshaped expectations almost overnight. Ukraine's retaking of Crimea stands as a military shock that surprised allies, rivals and observers alike. What many believed was fixed in place suddenly shifted, forcing a global reassessment of the conflict and its future direction. For years, Crimea was treated as irreversible. Heavy defenses, strategic geography, and symbolic importance created an image of permanence. That image shaped political narratives, military planning, and public perception far beyond the region itself. Ukraine's path to this moment was not sudden. It was marked by patience, adaptation, and a willingness to challenge assumptions. Rather than chasing dramatic breakthroughs, the focus remained on steady pressure and long-term objectives. The early stages were almost invisible. Movements appeared routine, messaging stayed restrained, and attention was drawn elsewhere. Beneath the surface, however, conditions were being carefully shaped. Logistics became a central focus. Supply routes were monitored, strained, and disrupted over time. As reliability decreased, the burden on defenders increased steadily. Communication challenges compounded these issues. Delays, gaps, and conflicting information slowed responses and complicated coordination. In high-pressure environments, even small disruptions can have outsized effects. Ukraine avoided unnecessary confrontation. Instead of forcing decisive battles, pressure was applied selectively. This approach preserved resources while gradually limiting options for opposing forces. Crimea's geography, long considered an advantage, introduced new constraints. Narrow access points and limited maneuver space reduced flexibility once pressure mounted. As strain increased, confidence began to erode. Positions required constant reinforcement, and adjustments created new vulnerabilities. Stability became harder to maintain. The shift did not come with a single defining moment. Control changed incrementally. Withdrawals occurred to stabilize lines, then occurred again as pressure followed. Each step altered the operational picture. Areas once heavily guarded became quieter. Control transitioned through persistence rather than spectacle. Intelligence played a decisive role. Accurate assessments allowed Ukraine to anticipate reactions and choose timing carefully. This clarity reduced risk and maintained momentum. Electronic and information disruptions added another layer. Communication breakdowns increased uncertainty, and uncertainty shaped decisions. Morale reflected the cumulative effect. Sustained pressure without clear relief wears on confidence. Cohesion weakened as uncertainty grew. Ukraine's public communication remained disciplined. There were no exaggerated claims or premature announcements. This restraint strengthened credibility at a critical moment. As reports aligned, international observers began to recognize the scale of change. Early skepticism gave way to confirmation that Crimea was indeed shifting back under Ukrainian control. The symbolic impact was immense. Crimea had been central to narratives of strength and permanence. Its return challenged those narratives directly. Strategically, the implications are far-reaching. Control over ports, infrastructure, and transport routes affects regional security and economic flows. Markets and diplomatic channels reacted quickly. Risk assessments changed, conversations intensified, and long-term planning adjusted. For civilians, the transition brought uncertainty. Changes in authority affect daily life immediately. Security, services, and governance became urgent priorities. Ukraine emphasized stability in its messaging. The focus moved toward order, continuity, and civilian protection. This tone mattered both locally and internationally. Retaking territory introduces new challenges. Administration, logistics, and security require sustained effort. Success depends on management as much as military action. Allies viewed the development as validation of long-term support. Preparation and coordination appeared to have produced tangible results. Analysts began re-evaluating assumptions about static defenses. Fortifications alone proved insufficient against adaptable, sustained pressure. The operation highlighted endurance. Rather than seeking dramatic turning points, Ukraine allowed pressure to accumulate gradually. Timing proved decisive. When movement became unavoidable, options were limited. Each withdrawal made the next more likely. Crimea's return under Ukrainian control reshaped diplomatic dynamics. Negotiation positions shifted and leverage changed. Inside Russia, the development prompted reassessment. Questions emerged about planning, preparedness, and response. Narrative management became difficult. Explaining the loss without acknowledging failure proved challenging. Silence often spoke louder than statements. Ukraine's cohesion during this phase stood out. Success did not fracture command or messaging. Discipline remained consistent. The broader conflict entered a new stage. While no single event determines an entire war, this moment shifted momentum significantly. The psychological impact extended beyond the battlefield. Long-held assumptions collapsed, forcing recalculation across multiple domains. Modern warfare increasingly rewards adaptability. This episode reinforced that reality clearly. Crimea's retaking was not defined by spectacle. It was shaped by persistence, coordination, and strategic clarity. Media coverage reflected the shift. Initial confusion gave way to consistent reporting as evidence mounted. For military planners worldwide, the episode offers lessons. Static thinking invites disruption, while flexibility creates opportunity. The human cost remains central. Civilians and soldiers alike bear the weight of change. Their experiences define the meaning of victory. Ukraine's restraint reduced the risk of unnecessary escalation. Stability became the priority once control shifted. As governance structures adjusted, attention turned to integration and reconstruction. These steps will define long-term success. The retaking of Crimea challenges the idea of irreversible outcomes. It demonstrates how sustained strategy can reshape reality. International responses continue to evolve. Policies adapt to the new landscape and alliances reassess priorities. For Ukraine, the moment represents both achievement and responsibility. Expectations rise alongside opportunity. For the region, it marks a rebalancing. Security dynamics shift and future planning adjusts accordingly. The military shock lies not only in territory regained, but in assumptions overturned. Crimea's story now reflects change rather than permanence. As time passes, the significance of this moment will deepen. Its lessons extend beyond borders and conflicts. Ukraine's path forward will test governance as much as resolve. The conflict itself remains complex and unresolved. Yet this chapter stands out as transformative. Control returned not through chance, but through deliberate effort and sustained pressure. The peninsula's future will depend on stability, inclusion, and security. For observers, the takeaway is clear. Strategy, patience, and adaptability matter. What once seemed fixed proved flexible under persistent pressure. Ukraine's retaking of Crimea shocked the world because it challenged expectations that had hardened over years. That shock continues to reverberate through military planning, diplomacy, and public perception. It reminds us that modern conflicts are defined as much by endurance and intelligence as by force. As the situation continues to evolve, the full impact of this moment will become clearer. For now, one fact stands firm. Ukraine retook Crimea, delivering a military shock that surprised the world and reshaped the trajectory of the conflict. And as history looks back on this chapter, it will be remembered not for a single moment, but for the strategy and resolve that made it possible.